No news for the Dodgers. So we're going to take some questions that we had from last week's mailbag, talking about the bullpen, talking about Mookie Betts at second base and the Ohtani Effect at Dodger Stadium. And should the Dodgers bring back a reliever from last year's team? That's all coming up. So let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com and use code Locked On to get $20 off. That's JASE medical.com. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to become one of our favorite listeners, that's an everydayer. Everydayer is someone that listens or watches every day. And we're here for you every Monday through Friday for about 30 minutes. If this is your first time listening or watching, you can become an everydayer starting today. And my name is Vince Samperio, and I'm usually joined by co-host Jeff Snider, but it'll be just me today. And Jeff and I are both lifelong Dodger fans that have covered the team for a few years now via this podcast and via other methods. We've been in the press box, we've been in the locker room, we've been in Camelback Ranch, we've been in Dodger Stadium, we've been all over. And we're not quite insiders. We're just some big-time fans that sometimes get a little bit of access that bring you what we believe to be some smart and rational takes about the Dodgers and hopefully some knowledge for you to take to your friends and family if they're not already listeners. And that's what we're here to do again today. Yesterday, we had the news of Teoscar Hernandez signing a one-year deal with the Dodgers. We got no update, no official signing yet. Obviously, no 40-man roster move. We did get a couple notes on incentives based on where he stands in the MVP race and if he wins a Silver Slugger. Not significant money, but if he does hit all those incentives, that means he has a pretty good year. So I'm pretty sure the Dodgers would have no issue with a few extra million going his way in that sense. But there was no other real news in Dodger land in terms of guys the Dodgers have been linked to. No other real big news there other than Shota Managa, who has his posting, should be done by January 11th. We're now on January 9th. The Giants have reportedly emerged as the front runners or the favorites in that race for Imanaga. The Dodgers haven't been mentioned in a while, and realistically, with the price tag going up, they probably weren't going to be in on him for what his deal might be now. So they might be facing him a little bit more often if he signs with the Giants, but probably not going to come to LA. All that to say, and to move on to somebody we haven't heard in a while, and this one was reported on Sunday, I believe, but obviously with the Hernandez signing, there was bigger news to talk about. Mike Giovanna from LA Times reported that the Dodgers have some interest in Ryan Brasier still, and it's an interesting one because it's one of those where like Ryan Brasier was so good for the Dodgers last year once he came over, after the Red Sox let him go. And then we just haven't heard anything about him, not just from the Dodger front, but just in general from like his own, him signing somewhere else. We remember when the Dodgers got Chris Martin in 2022 and he had a really strong end to the season for the Dodgers. And, he was snatched up pretty quick. Red Sox got him. Probably regret that now that they're trying to shed payroll and they signed a reliever to the deal that he got. But regardless, it's interesting that Brazier's still out there. But bullpen arms in general haven't moved too quickly. Obviously the main ones like Hader are still out there. And then you got, the next level like Aroldis Chapman is still out there. You still got Hector Neris, a guy we've talked about before. Brazier's a little bit below that tier, but, still available. The Dodgers, having interest is obvious because he was really good for them, and you can never have too many bullpen arms. Last year, he came over after posting a 7.29 ERA in 20 games with the Red Sox. He came over, pitched in 39 games for the Dodgers, 38.2 innings, had a .70 ERA, 38 strikeouts in those 38.2 innings, a .724 WHIP. He did outperform his FIP by almost 2 runs, but regardless, he was good for the Dodgers. He came through and was a big reason for them to kind of keep that second half push going and extend their lead in the division. Now, the interest, I would imagine it's there was no level of what the interest was, but just based on what they have on their roster right now, I can't imagine it's huge interest. It's one of those maybe where they're like, hey, we're interested if literally nobody else wants you and you can sign a really cheap deal, maybe even a minor league deal, and then go to spring training. And once the Dodgers can clear some roster spots on the 60-man, then maybe bring them up to the 40-man roster. But yeah, for me, Brasier, I think it's one of those where they're waiting to see what else happens, because they realistically don't have too many spots left right now in the bullpen, in terms of guys that they probably are wanting to go into the season with. And they still are technically in the market for a top flight reliever. They've been linked to Josh Hader. They've been linked to Emmanuel Clase. They've kind of indirectly been linked now to Kenley Jansen, that since the Red Sox are looking to trim payroll. And, all those guys would be above Brasier in a pecking order and, serve a different purpose. But for Brasier, if it ends up working out that the Dodgers can get him back on a cheap 1-year deal, I'd be 100% okay with that. Obviously, they unlock something. I wouldn't expect him to have a .7 ERA over the course of an entire season. And if it was cheap enough, it's one of those where you can sign them. And if it doesn't work out, relievers are volatile, then you say, thank you for your time, Ryan Brasier. We appreciate you for 2023. Didn't quite work out in 2024, and, send you on your way. So I would imagine that's the extent of the Dodgers' interest. I don't see him signing anytime soon, or definitely not before any of the big relievers go somewhere or sign somewhere. So, yeah, it makes sense for the Dodgers to have interest. It also makes sense for that interest to be a little bit lower than guys above him. And even if they don't get a guy like Hader or a top flight closer, a top flight back end of the bullpen, it's not a guarantee they're going to go after Brasier right after that. Just depends how they feel about the other arms in their system. And, that's actually what we're going to talk about in the next segment is the overall bullpen check. We had a question last week when we put out a call for mailbags about the bullpen, and from Corey Shadid. He said, as of right now, what does our bullpen look like? And is JP Fireisen going to help us? So that's what we're going to talk about, and that's what we're going to get into. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. We come to sports for an escape from the crazy reality that we live in. And real life is still out there, and it's still something that we should talk about. And let's talk about it right now, because are you prepared for what that reality may bring? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in a decade. And it's, a little bit unsettling for sure. And, you can't, if you're someone with kids or you're someone, who's compromised yourself in terms of your immune system, it's a little bit, concerning if you might not be able to get what you need right away. That's what Jase Medical is here for, because they have a Jase case, which is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, UTIs, among others. All that stuff could happen to any of us, and you can be prepared if you have a Jase case there with you. All you got to do is go to jasemedical.com, meet with the doctor, and get reviewed, board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's all easy. It's all right there for you. Jeff already did it and got his Jase case a while back, so he's prepared. And it's time for you to get prepared now, because there's never been a more important time. So right now, go to jasemedical.com And remember, if you use the offer code Locked On, you'll get $20 off your order. That's JASEmedical.com. Code Locked On for $20 off your order. Go check it out. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to make us make sure to become an everydayer by listening or watching every day. We're here for you every Monday through Friday for about 30 minutes. Remember, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And that Locked On Podcast Network has two 24/7 streaming channels that might be of interest to you. One is Locked On Sports Today, covering all the sports news and stories from the sports world, and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, which is doing the same, but for the sports teams in Los Angeles. There is Locked On Rams, Locked On Lakers, Locked On Clippers, and everything else you could want right there. So go to YouTube, subscribe to each or any of those, and check it out. It's running all day, and we're only here 30 minutes. They're there 24/7. So go check it out. All right. So, like I mentioned, we have the question about the bullpen and specifically if JP Fireeisen is someone that we can expect to help the Dodgers. And, obviously that is someone we could expect to help the Dodgers. So we'll kind of look at what arms are there and kind of see, break it down right now. So if we go bullpen arms that are on the 40-man roster, guys that have already been in the majors as a bullpen piece or are expected to be that, you have Yency Almonte, you have Caleb Ferguson, you have JP Fireeisen, you have Brusdar Graterol, you have Joe Kelly, you have Evan Phillips, you have Blake Trinan, you have Alex Vesia, that's 8. You have Ryan Yarbrough, 9. And then continuing on the 40-man roster with people that could also be in that role, you have Michael Grove, you have Kyle Hurt, you have Ricky Vanasco, you have Gus Varland. So that's a lot of arms for potentially just 7 bullpen spots, or 7 or 8 bullpen spots. It obviously is going to depend on if the Dodgers go 5-man rotation or 6-man rotation. And honestly, depending if they go 5 or 6-man rotation, could be the same people, just a matter of if that 6th guy is getting a turn through the rotation every time through or is a long reliever / filling in when the Dodgers want to give guys an extra day of rest. So that's a lot of names that I just named for not a lot of spots. We haven't heard anything negative or positive about JP Fireeisen in a while. Anytime that Brandon Gomes or Andrew Friedman or Dave Roberts has been available to talk this offseason, it's coming off the heels of a major deal signing. So, unfortunately, JP Fireeisen probably doesn't make the cut for questions asked to them. But I would imagine that everything is going well with him in his rehab, and he will be ready to go for the Dodgers. And if he is, I think he's one of the guys that gets, obviously, consideration for that bullpen role. And, it's one of those where I named a lot of names, and if you kind of work backwards in the sense of, let's just say you're trying to find 8 guys, to kind of fill that role. Let's say you go 5-man rotation and you got 8 guys. So you build backwards. So right now you got Evan Phillips, filling in the back end. And then behind him, you have Brusdar Graterol and Joe Kelly and Blake Trinan kind of filling in, the back of the bullpen. You got one of or both of Caleb Ferguson and Alex Vesia. And then you have, JP Fireeisen, who's right there. And you have Yency Almonte, who's, probably right there. And, Ryan Yarbrough could be, one of the long guys or a guy that they count on for multiple innings. So, if you're going off guys good enough to pitch in the major leagues, the Dodgers have more than enough names. Obviously, that could get added to if they decide to go after, a bigger reliever for the back end of the bullpen, or if they don't feel comfortable. Yency Almonte is a guy that had a good year in 2022, struggled with injuries and struggled last year. You can't necessarily know what you're going to get from him right now. So, he's not a for sure. Alex Vesia and Caleb Ferguson are both, I wouldn't say any of them are locks for the bullpen. I would say probably one of them is you want to have at least one lefty out of the bullpen. And, that might be, and Yarbrough. Like between those three, you might only have one of them on the roster, depending how you go with your rotation and what you're looking for. And it might be a straight out battle in the spring of, how well can you work in the spring, and can the Dodgers use you? There's different ways to go about it. Blake Trinan, we mentioned him as a back end guy, but it's not for sure that he's going to be healthy or can remain healthy, or the Dodgers might want to bring him along slowly and might want to start him off on the injured list or something like that to kind of build out his arm and make sure he's ready to go more for the end of the season rather than beginning of the season. We don't know. Daniel Hudson, brought back on a minor league deal. He's a guy that definitely could fill in, and be a guy for the Dodgers in the back end of that rotation. So, there's a lot of names that can be used out of the bullpen, and that's without getting a top tier guy. They do get a top tier guy, everyone gets pushed down a little bit, and that might be part of the roster crunch that ends up happening, or some of these trades that we've been talking about. We've talked about a lot of these trades with the prospects of Bush and Vargas and Stone and Frasso and all these types of guys, but a reliever with some years of control that can be pretty decent for cheap has some benefit too. Guys like Yency Almonte, Alex Vesia, could make sense for another team and, could end up being used in a trade where, guys like Caleb Ferguson going into his last year maybe could be, using a trade or more likely to get DFA. There's different ways to think about it and go about it. So, I think the bullpen's in a pretty healthy spot right now in terms of having enough arms, and then the Dodgers can just figure out which of those arms are going to be good enough for the roster and to be, deployed. And then, as the season goes on, obviously guys will kind of emerge, guys will fall back, and, it'll all kind of sort itself out, hopefully in a positive way and not in a negative way. So I think the bullpen is shaping up to be fine, and obviously could use a top tier name just for the simple fact of like we've talked about, making Evan Phillips more of the fireman type again, and coming in at any point in the later innings whenever you're needed to face a tough situation, and then you give the closer a easier ninth inning where you're coming in with nobody on and nobody out and having a fresh clean inning. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what the Dodgers end up doing. Like I said, Ryan Brasier, I do think if they do bring him back at this point, it could be on a minor league deal as well with an invite spring training, and then they, figure it out in spring training, similar to Daniel Hudson. But I would imagine, hopefully, he can parlay those games with the Dodgers into at least a 1-year deal somewhere. Wish the best for him if he does do that, and if not, and he comes back and he's a non-roster invitee, then more power to him there. So we'll see what happens. As we know, bullpen arms are not the same year to year for the most part. And, some guys might struggle. Some guys might step up. There might be a name that I haven't even mentioned yet that's either on the 40-man roster. Well, I mentioned almost everyone that's possible on the 40-man roster, but, that might step up. Michael Grove might step up as a guy in a multiple inning type of role. Or hey, you know what? I can throw a lot better and a lot harder in 1 inning than I can in over 5 innings. And, now I have value as reliever. Kyle Hertz, a name that we remember from last year, making his debut, shutting down the Padres, going 1-2-3 against Tatis and Soto and Manny, and then, striking out the side in the next inning. And, stuff looked really good. Stuff looked really nasty. He was, very, very good in the minor leagues, striking out a lot of guys. So, there's a lot of talent there. They just got to find the way to put them together and piece it all together. And, as that's what spring training is for. And that's what, kind of what we're looking for. There's not going to be too much intrigue in spring training from the position player side. Kind of, we talked about it yesterday where, the Dodgers could not make another move on the position player side, and their roster is already set. The 13 guys that they probably plan to use are already set. There might not be any competition in the starting rotation, depending how things go. There might be a battle for number 5 starter or number 6 starter, depending how they go, or and then the bullpen. So like the pitching side is where a lot of competition is going to come from and stuff we're going to look forward to in spring training. And, we just have to wait and see if that's who the Dodgers get, if they get anyone else, and if not, who steps up and becomes a guy for the Dodgers. So there's a couple more questions involving Mookie Betts, and if it was the right move to get him into the infield, and then the Ohtani Yamamoto effect at Dodger Stadium for the coming season. We're going to get into that, so make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL regular season is over, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You got Wild Card Weekend coming up in the NFL, and it might not be easy to pick who's going to win each game, but guess what? You don't have to, because with FanDuel right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place any $5 bet. You just have to place one $5 bet, $5 into your account, place a bet, and no matter what, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets right there in your account, ready to use. What can you use bonus bets on? Well, you can use it like, money to make bets with. And with the FanDuel app, there's a lot of ways to build out bets. There's a lot of ways to spread that money around, and a lot of different ways to bet. You can do live same game parlays, which is, picking a few things to happen in the same game. There's a new Explore tab in the app where you can find bets that people are doing that are being used a lot, that are probably based on TV shows or other pregame shows that might be building out different bets. You can check that out. And then there's the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays. And if you don't know enough from yourself, you can check out what other people are doing. So go get the FanDuel app right now. You can get it at FanDuel.com/locked-on and make your first bet count. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Become an everydayer by listening and watching every day. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider, you can do so at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can get text message interaction with us, direct line to our phone, and get our thoughts and send your own thoughts and send your topics and things of that nature. And then once season starts, if I'm heading to some of these games as a media member, you might get some batting practice videos and things of that nature. So go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers and you can be part of that. All right. So a couple other questions we had from last week that we didn't get to talk about. One of them is talking about Mookie Betts, and it was a question of his move to the infield from @DrewBond209. Says, how do you feel about Mookie's role? Do we like him at second base? And then he mentions the World Series run. He was exclusively in right field and had some amazing defensive plays out there that changed the course of the postseason. And, that is true. That 2020 run had, a lot of great plays out there up against the wall from Mookie. He's had other big plays over the course of the regular seasons as well, the last few years in right field. Throwing somebody out at second, going into the right field in Arizona, making the game-ending catch in San Diego, the diving catch. So it's tough to see a Gold Glove, right fielder, one of the best defensive, if not the best defensive right fielder in baseball, get moved to second base where, it might deduct some of his defensive value. And, I can understand the hesitancy there. I do think that what you're going to have out there for the most part is, most likely Jason Hayward and or Emmanuel Margot and or Chris Taylor for the most part. And I think all those guys, none of those guys are up to Mookie's level, but I think they're good enough. Mookie obviously is really comfortable in the infield. He wants to play infield. He really only went to the outfield because Dustin Pedroia was at second base when he came up initially with the Red Sox, and then he just obviously stuck out there because he couldn't stop winning Gold Gloves out there in right field. So I do think that's a difference. I think that 2020 run, not to say that Mookie, it wasn't a matter of him being very great defensively, but I think the Dodgers benefited from having all those games in Texas. Mookie kind of learned that right field like it was his home field, and used it to his advantage, knowing where the wall was, how high the wall was, making those big plays, and that was beneficial. And I think you might lose some of those plays specifically. Just Jason Hayward doesn't have to jump as high as Mookie does on some of those. If they played it the same, I think, yeah, you're losing a little bit defensively in right field, but I don't think it's enough to make it a huge deal. And then you go from having one of the best right fielders in the game to having the best second or the best hitting second baseman in the game. Another year at second base, Mookie gets more comfortable. That position probably needs a little bit more athleticism now because of the rules in the shift. So that's where Mookie likes to play. And I think if it became an issue in the outfield, then Mookie would go right back out to right field. And if that was the case, then you have one of the best outfielders again out there. So I understand it if it's not a move everyone loved. I can't even say it's a move I loved, but it's a move that Mookie loves. And if to keep Mookie happy, to keep him producing, maybe he doesn't produce as much offensively like he did last year if he stayed out in right field. Who knows? But if he's cool with it, I'm cool with it. If it becomes an issue defensively or even offensively, let's just say Hayward doesn't hit again, and they end up making a different move, and they need they get an infielder or something like that, and Mookie goes back out there to right field. I think they wouldn't hesitate to do that, and we'll just have to wait and see. So the next question we have is from Dre at Andre with a lot of E's and a few extra N's in there. She said, how will the increased media presence due to Ohtani and Yamamoto affect stadium logistics? More room in the press box, increased traffic getting into the stadium. What are our thoughts? Yeah, there's definitely, for media specifically, there's definitely going to be less room in the press box. I don't know how the Dodgers are going to handle it right now. Their press box is not that big compared to other press boxes I've been to in a lot of different stadiums. They don't have a lot of seats. Even last year there was days where there wasn't enough seats for everybody, and you either had to work out another little room they have back there, or I guess maybe we'll try to find an empty seat. I don't know if they're going to open up an auxiliary press box this year for maybe days Yamamoto starts or big, opening day and stuff like that, where they have media out in different areas. If that was the case, then it would take away some seats from, paying fans. Obviously wouldn't take any one specific seats away. It would just mean that there's less seats available because they might take a small section for media. So it could affect that way. I don't know. Honestly, have no idea how that's going to go. So we'll just have to, kind of wait and see there. Increased traffic getting into the stadium. I do think that, the Dodgers are going to have 35, 40,000 on any given night. Most nights, 45, 40, 45,000, and the big nights, 50,000. So I don't see getting into the stadium being any different in the sense of what it already is. What I am interested to see is, do those random. The Dodgers don't have a lot of days with like absolutely no giveaways anymore. Between the actual giveaways that they already have, between the theme night giveaways that they have, there's not a lot of nights that are void of something, people getting something or going there for a specific reason. But on those nights, last year where it was 35,000 instead of 45, 50,000, I do wonder, will there be, is it one of those where the Dodgers are going to get 40,000 at least every game, 45,000 at least every game? I don't know. That's possible that, especially on days Yamamoto pitches, I'm sure there'll be increased fans if it's not already a packed game or a bobblehead game or something like that. Will that random Tuesday game that doesn't have any, random Tuesday, Wednesday game that doesn't have any giveaways attached to it. Will that go from a 35,000 fan night to a 40,000 fan night? There might be, differences. I definitely think opening day, start getting ready now for opening day at Dodger Stadium. I definitely think, any Ohtani or Yamamoto giveaways, bobbleheads or any giveaways that they end up doing, you're definitely going to want to get there super early. I do think those games will be more crazy, but other than that, I don't know on a day-to-day basis how different it'll be. From what I've seen or what I remember from going to some Angel games when they had Ohtani-related giveaways, people get there early. And, Angels don't give out as many bobbleheads as Dodger Stadium does, but people got there early. And, if it's one of those nights, you're going to want to get there early. If it's a big night, big game, you're going to want to get there early. I don't know if it's going to change much for, those random games or Sunday games or stuff like that. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I definitely think there'll be more fans than there were last year. And that'll mean more traffic on some nights and, crazier traffic on some days. So we'll see what happens. In terms of like the increased media presence doing any of that, media is going to get there early, super early, and they go through one entrance and they go through and, it doesn't know. So if you're asking for specific media presence increase going to affect anything, no, other than there might be some games where they have auxiliary press seats that takes a little bit of, the corners of reserve by the foul poles away. Other than that, you're probably not going to notice anything media because they can get there as early as 2 p.m. and, they might not leave till way later. So, but good question. And I am interested to see how a lot of these nights go for the Dodgers this year. So that's going to do it for today's episode. We appreciate all your questions. We'll probably put out a call for more questions later on this week, assuming the Dodgers don't do anything big. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Remember, we're here for you every Monday through Friday for about 30 minutes. You can become an everydayer by listening or watching every day. We'd appreciate it. You'll be on the podcast and become an insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers and get a direct line to text Jeff and I. Remember, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, who has 2 24/7 streaming channels that might be of value to you. Locked On Sports Today, covering all the news and stories from around sports. And they have Locked On Sports Los Angeles doing the same for LA Sports, both on YouTube, both streaming 24/7. You can subscribe to either of those. You can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Vincents91. You can DM either of us for any questions, comments, concerns. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us when you get in your car. If you're at home, text Smart Advice Play Podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.